This is Fothentic History.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Brian Young.
And I'm Holly Fry.
Today we're going to tell the tale of Lúthien and Beren, a story from the first age of Middle-earth. Now, this is an old story, and there's some differences and details out there, but we try to do our best to condense this into a single narrative. And it's going to be a two-parter, so we'll let you know, obviously, when this episode is going to end and the next will begin. It's also worth noting that neither Holly nor I are scholars of Elvish tongues, so we've made every effort to offer correct pronunciations, but we apologize in advance for anything we might have inadvertently butchered.
It's going to happen. It's a safe bet. So to set the scene for the story of Lúthien and Beren, we need to go back in time a little bit to before the First Age and to the forging of the Silmarils, as they'll play a vital part in this story. For those who might not know, the Silmarils were also known as the Jewels of Feanor. Feanor, a legendary gemsmith and craftsman of the elves, created the Silmarils with the essence of the two trees of Valinor, capturing their light in 3 gems, and they were some of the most prized creations of the elves.
Feanor was also the creator of the Palantirs and other mystical wonders held in high regard through the ages, and he often wore the Silmarils proudly in a crown on his brow. And the longer he possessed them, though, the more he coveted them, and the more he suspected his fellow elves of trying to steal them. And this was completely untrue and created rifts among his kin, but there was one in the world who did want to steal them.
Melkor, the first Dark Lord, had rebelled against his creator Eru and sought to corrupt the world. With the help of Ungoliant, the first spider, whose name is Sindarin for Dark Spider, and mother of Shelob, Melkor destroyed the trees of Valinor, killed Feanor's father Finwë, and stole the Silmarils. Together, they fled across the grinding ice of the Helcarax and into Middle-earth and the ruins of Angband. In the previous age, Angband, which is Sindarin for Iron Prison, had been Melkor's second castle, left in command of Sauron. We're going to get into that later. But now it lay abandoned, and the Balrogs that patrolled it slumbered.
With the only remaining light of the trees of Valinor captured in the Silmarils, the elves naturally wanted to get those back. Feanor himself wanted them back for his own personal greed as well. And it was then that Feanor renamed Melkor Morgoth, which meant Dark Enemy. Feanor launched his attacks, but Morgoth was able to wake the Balrogs, gather forces, and create waves and waves of orcs.
Feanor fought valiantly to regain the Silmarils, but was eventually slain by Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs. For many, many years, Morgoth controlled Angband and that part of the land, soon corrupting many of the men who lived in the area. The elves, though they fought as hard as they could, had never been able to recapture any of the Silmarils from Morgoth. Though they never gave up hope, they were thought to be lost to them.
During the Fourth Great Battle of this conflict, Morgoth did much damage. And this was a turning point in the war, and he was able to gain much ground here. And one side effect of this battle, though, was that he drove the humans who lived in the city of Dorthonion from their homes. And Dorthonion was a human settlement on the edge of Morgoth's domain, and it was a natural target for expansion. And the leader of this town was a man named Berahir. And after the city was lost, he took to the hills with 12 men so that they might strike back as best they could. And among these men was his son Beren.
And it was here that they stayed for 5 years, winning small victories against Morgoth in his own territory until the year 460 of the First Age. They were betrayed by one of their own to Sauron. Gorlim, son of Angrim, was hunting near his old house and saw a vision of his wife that he'd presumed dead. Stunned by this revelation, he was caught and brought before Sauron. And Sauron promised him that in return for giving up Berahir's band of outlaws, he would reunite Gorlim with his wife. Gorlim agreed, and he was dismayed to find out that the specter of his wife was just that, an illusion created by Sauron. Sauron did keep his promise, though, and allowed Gorlim to join his wife, at least in death.
Sauron, as many of you know, was one of the angelic creations of Eru as well as Morgoth was, and he rebelled under Morgoth. And he would eventually become known as the Necromancer for a time, but would reemerge as Sauron during the end of the conflict involving the Rings of Power. So just to give you a little bit of a primer on who he was, that was sort of his deal. He was just one of Morgoth's lieutenants until Morgoth's eventual destruction. He sort of tried to take power for himself.
Once Sauron had the information from Gorlam, he sent a band of orcs to deal with Barahir once and for all. The orcs surprised Barahir and his troop in their encampment and slaughtered everyone who was there. The only one who escaped this slaughter was Beren himself, who was out on an errand for his father at the time. Beren came back to find that the orc captain had chopped off his father's hand, and with that hand taking with him the ring of Barahir.
The ring would become important in the history of Middle-earth. It was described in the epic poem The Lay of Leithian. Proud are the words and all there turned, to see the jewels green that burned. In Beren's ring, these gnomes had set as eyes of serpents twined that met beneath a golden crown of flowers, that one upholds and one devours, the badge that Finrod made of yore, and Felagund his son now bore.
And this was the ring that would eventually be passed down to Aragorn II, son of Arathorn, by Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, when his true lineage was revealed.
Beren, finding this slaughter, buried his father in a cairn of stones and set out to recover his father's stolen hand and the ring upon it. And he was able to do this quickly and then flee to the outskirts of Dorthonion, and this is where we catch up to him in order to tell our tale.
For a long time, he lived off the land, and he befriended all the birds and the beasts that were not in the service of Morgoth. Those that were in the service of Morgoth he killed as he found them, and this was the only meat that he ate.
And this caused a real problem for Morgoth, who was having his minions killed so frequently and close to home. Beren was able to stay in this region, causing problems for quite a while, but Morgoth increased the price on Beren's head so that it became almost impossible for Beren to stay. Sauron brought an army into the woods, an army that included werewolves. Because his home was now filled with evil, Beren felt forced to flee with the winter. Climbing over the mountains of terror, he found himself in the land of Doriath, and he decided to find his way to the hidden kingdom of elves, a place no mortal had ever set foot.
To get there, Beren had to cross through the wilderness of Dugnertheb. This was a wasteland created by the sorcery of Sauron. Ungoliant's spider children roamed freely in the forest, and there was no animal or plant life in this wasteland that was suitable for human or elvish consumption. This journey was so difficult for him, and the details of how he made it are completely unknown. He refused to speak of it, and there is no record of how he managed to survive, but it's easy to imagine that this was not an easy challenge.
Soon, Beren found himself at the edge of Doriath, the elven kingdom ruled by Thingol and Melian. Thingol was the High King of the Sindar, with silver hair and the tallest of the elves. Melian was of the same race as Morgoth, but set her powers to the light. With her sorcery, she'd created a maze of forest around Doriath to keep out mortals, but somehow in his wandering, Beren had found a way in. Winter had turned to summer, and Beren found himself in the woods of Neldoreth.
And this is where he first laid eyes on Luthien, the daughter of Thingol and Melian. She danced alone in the twilight in a meadow on the shore of the Isgalduin River. Perhaps it was some magic of the place, or it was the exhaustion of his almost unending journey, but Beren was entranced by the sight of the elvish princess, and was said to have all of his pain leave him. And it's no wonder he would be transfixed. She was described in the Quenta Silmarillion like this.
Luthien was the most beautiful of the children of Ilúvatar. Blue was her raiment as the unclouded heaven, but her eyes were gray as the starlit evening. Her mantle was sown with golden flowers, but her hair was dark as the shadows of twilight. As the light upon the leaves of trees, as the voice of clear waters, as the stars above the mists of the world, such was her glory and her loveliness, and in her face was a shining light.
And at this point she vanished from Beren's sight. As if under a spell he sought her out, searching for who he called Tinúviel in his mind. And this was a word that meant poetically, but not literally, nightingale in Sindarin. It originated from a term that actually meant daughter of twilight. And since he didn't know her real name was Lúthien, this was what he called her. He caught a glimpse of her once in the winds of autumn, and another in the winter as a star upon a hill, but he wouldn't gain her attention until spring.
She thawed the winter of the forest with her song, and this broke Beren's spell of silence, and he called out Tinúviel. It's said that this is what stopped her in her tracks, for his call echoed through the woods. She finally allowed him to catch up to her, and it's said that a doom came about her, for she realized then that she'd fallen in love with this mortal. And they embraced, but she fled once more, leaving Beren there in the woods to swoon over her, in bliss for having known her touch and attention, but in grief because she'd left him.
This turned into a long romance between the two of them. She would return and take his hand, and they could pretend they would be able to live their life together. As a princess and an immortal as an elf, marrying a mortal like Beren was really not much of a viable option. And if her parents ever found out about it, it would not be a good thing for anybody.
This is where Daron comes into the story. Daron was a Sindarin elf and a frequent player in the court of Thingol and Melian, as he was their official lore master and minstrel. And he loved Luthien dearly, but she did not reciprocate this love. He wanted badly to woo her with his music, and he wrote many songs to her and in her honor, but it was not enough. And this is really saying something, as Daron was considered the greatest musician in all of Middle-earth. He followed Luthien in a completely inappropriate manner and found out about her trysts with Beren.
Knowing the king would not be pleased with Luthien promising herself to a mortal, he told Thingol of his daughter's secret and her love for Beren. And naturally, this angered Thingol, so he confronted his daughter. For her part, Luthien would not discuss the issue until her father had sworn an oath, promising two things: that he would neither slay nor imprison Beren.
So Thingol instructed his soldiers to find Beren, rough him up, and bring him to the city of Menegroth as a common criminal. But Luthien interceded and brought Beren into her father's court as though he were an honored guest. By all accounts, this angered Thingol significantly. Melian stayed silent on the matter, deferring to her husband. Thingol demanded to know who Beren was and why he dared come to his throne, but it was Luthien who responded.
She announced her lover proudly, explaining who he was. Quote, "He is Beren, son of Berahir," she said, "lord of men, mighty foe of Morgoth, the tale of whose deeds is become a song even among elves."
This did not sit well with Thingol, and he demanded that Beren speak for himself. And it was said that Beren found strength in the eyes of both Melian and Luthien, and explained what he wanted: Luthien's hand in marriage, proclaiming that Thingol's daughter was the fairest of all the children of the world.
Had anyone else said this to the Elven king, they would have found themselves instantly executed. But Thingol had decided to honor his oath to his daughter. He expressed this displeasure to Beren in an incredibly rude way, calling him both a thief and a spy, but Beren rebuked the king. He presented the Ring of Berahir and reminded the Elvish king of his status, saying to him, quote, "My house has not earned such names from any elf, be he king or no."
Thingol was in a hard position. Though not immortal, Beren did deserve a begrudging respect from the Elvish royalty, and Thingol had sworn to neither kill nor imprison Beren, and his daughter was intent on being with this man. So he did the only thing he could do to protect his daughter. He agreed to the marriage, but on one condition: that Beren bring to him one of the Silmarils which had been used to decorate Morgoth's crown. If he did this, Thingol would readily agree to the match.
For any other mortal, this quest would seem daunting, but Beren accepted eagerly. This solution was perfect for Thingol. He wouldn't be breaking his oath if Beren died in the quest, and life would go on for the immortals as it always had. And if Beren prevailed, then the elves would have back one of their most prized possessions. Once Beren had left the throne room, Melian took that opportunity to explain to her husband that he was a fool.
Yeah, and it's really like, it's kind of funny that anybody else would have just been like, this is probably bad news. I don't want to do this. Like, she's not worth it. But Beren was all for it, and this didn't put Thingol in a good light for anybody. They thought it was kind of a jerk move. So Luthien was devastated and left, vowing not to sing again until Beren had returned. Beren, however, was focused in his purpose and set straight out for it. He wanted to get a Silmaril as quickly as he could so that he might live the rest of his life with Luthien. He went straight to the kingdom of Finrod Felagund. Felagund was an elf as well as a king and brother to Galadriel, of whom most listeners will be familiar with. Beren's father, Berahir, saved Felagund's life during the battle with Morgoth that cost Beren his homeland. The ring Beren wore on his finger, given to him by his father, was given to his father by Felagund himself in exchange for his service in the war.
Beren knew rightly that he would be unable to make it through Angband, through the orcs and the werewolves, past the Balrogs, beyond Morgoth, and into the place where the Silmarils were kept by himself. He needed help, and Felagund certainly owed his family, and so it was a natural place to look for that help. Beren was able to parley with the king, but found that invoking the oath he'd made to Beren's family put Felagund in kind of a difficult position.
So the elves believed the Silmarils to be cursed, and that any who sought them would wreak the havoc of chaos against the elves. This created a rift among Felagund and many of his subjects, but he found 10 elves that were loyal enough to follow their oaths to him, as he fulfilled his oath to Beren. And Felagund named his brother Steward in his stead, and the 12 companions sallied forth toward Angband.
And with Felagund and Beren setting out, that is where we are going to cliffhang you a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good spot because it kind of really changes the direction of things as we head out to part 2. Again, we don't have any mail for this issue or for this episode. So if you want to leave us mail, please do so by going to fauthentichistory.com and using the contact form to send us some messages. And you can talk to us about any of the episodes we've done. Where can people find you online, Holly? I
am on Twitter at surliestgirl.
And people can find me at Swankmotron. And unless there's if you want to leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else the podcast is available, we'd greatly appreciate that. And don't hesitate to tell your friends about the show. And with that, unless there's anything else you'd like to add, Holly?
Nope.
Then I think we're good. This is another completed episode of Authentic History, and we'll come back next time with part 2.